I want to start today with a job interview, but not a normal one.
Okay.
Imagine you're sitting across from Peter Thiel, billionaire, founder of PayPal, first investor in Facebook, and he looks you right in the eye and asks this question. What important truth do very few people agree with you on?
It's the ultimate stump question. It sounds so simple, like an icebreaker, but it just stops people dead in their tracks.
Right, because your first instinct is to say something smart, but
If
safe.
you want to sound intelligent but not actually risk anything.
Exactly. So you'd say something like, our education system is broken.
Which, I mean, who disagrees with that?
Nobody. Or America is more divided than ever, and Thiel would just, fail you for those answers
Yeah.
because everyone agrees with him. You're not a contrarian, you're just repeating the headlines.
Exactly. The question isn't really asking for an opinion, it's asking for a specific kind of courage. It tests whether you can look at the world, see something that everyone else just ignores or denies, and actually say it out loud.
And that whole premise that the future is built by people who look where others aren't, that is the absolute heartbeat of the book we're diving into today, 0 to 1.
It really is. It's one of those books people in Silicon Valley treat like a sacred text.
For sure. But it feels more like a philosophy book disguised as a business manual. Yeah. It's all about how to build the future. So let's start with the title, 0 to 1. I'll be honest, when I first heard it, I thought it was just, binary code stuff.
Right, but it's actually this core distinction he makes about progress. Thiel argues there are only two ways the world moves forward. First, you have 1 to N.
1 to N.
That's horizontal progress. It means copying things that work. So if you have one typewriter and you build 100 more, you've made horizontal progress.
Which is basically globalization, right? Taking something that works in, say, London or New York and making it work in Mumbai or Beijing.
Precisely. And that's important, don't get me wrong. But it's not new. Vertical progress is going from 0 to 1.
That's doing something nobody has ever done before.
Yes. It's taking that typewriter and inventing a word processor. It's so much harder to imagine because, by definition, there's no blueprint for it.
And his big argument is that we've become obsessed with 1 to N, with just tweaking and copying, while we've neglected 0 to 1. We're just optimizing the old world instead of inventing a new one.
Which he argues is incredibly dangerous. Because if we just copy the American lifestyle for every single person in India and China without new technology, we'll run out of resources and, well, burn up the planet. The only way out is to invent something new.
And okay, speaking of inventing something new versus copying, this is where I think the book gets really, really spicy.
Oh, this is the big one.
We grow up believing that competition is the engine of capitalism. It's survival of the fittest.
It's practically un-American to hate competition.
Right. But Thiel he throws a grenade into that whole idea. He says, essentially, competition is for losers.
It's a jarring statement, but he's looking at it from a purely economic profit perspective. I mean, Econ 101 teaches us that perfect competition is the ideal state for a market.
But in perfect competition, nobody makes any real
money. Right. You're fighting so hard for every customer that your margins get ground down to 0. You have to price your product exactly at the cost of production just to survive.
He uses this brutal comparison from 2012 to prove the point. He looks at U.S. airlines versus Google. Now, airlines are obviously essential.
Totally.
They move millions of people. They've generated $160 billion in revenue that year. They're the definition of a massive competitive industry.
And yet, they kept pennies. About 37 cents of profit per passenger trip.
That is insane. 37 cents.
Compare that with Google. Same year, Google made way less total revenue, about $50 billion. But it kept 21% of it as pure profit.
So at the time, Google was worth more than every single U.S. airline.
Combined, it's an incredible statistic.
Because airlines are in a dogfight, and Google basically stands alone.
Exactly. And this leads to Thiel's big contrarian truth. Capitalism and competition are not synonyms. He says they are opposites.
Capitalism is about accumulating capital.
And competition is about eliminating it. So if you want to build a valuable company, you shouldn't be competing. You should be building a monopoly.
Okay, we absolutely need to clear up the M word, though.
Right.
Because when people hear monopoly, they think of, the board game or some evil tycoon twisting his mustache and bribing politicians.
And he's not talking about illegal government-enforced monopolies or bullies. He calls them creative monopolies. These are companies that are just so good at what they do that no one can offer a close substitute.
Like Google and Search, or Apple in the early days of the iPhone.
Exactly. And the argument is that these monopolies are actually good for society because their huge profits let them do things competitive companies can't. They can invest in long-term R&D, they can treat employees better.
Right. If you're a restaurant in a fierce market, you have to cut corners just to make rent. Google can afford to fund self-driving cars.
But here's the funny part. No one admits their actual status. Thiel calls this the great lie.
The great lie.
If you are a monopoly, you pretend you aren't, so the Department of Justice doesn't come knocking. Google will never say we own search. We'll say, oh, we're a player in the global advertising market, or we are a tech company competing with Apple and Amazon.
They widen the description to make their market share look tiny.
But the little guys, the ones who are actually competing, they do the exact opposite. They lie to pretend they're unique.
This is my favorite analogy in the whole discussion. The British food restaurant in Palo Alto.
Oh, it's a classic trap.
So say you want to open a restaurant. You know the industry is brutal. So you tell your investors, hey, we aren't just another restaurant. We're the only British food restaurant in Palo Alto.
You've defined the market so narrowly that you are the only one in it. You've got a monopoly on British food in Palo Alto.
So it's total delusion. Because when I'm hungry, I don't think I must have British food and absolutely nothing else. I think I want to eat.
So you aren't competing with zero people.
You're competing with the pizza place, the sushi spot, the burger joint, everything. You've defined your market to make yourself feel special, but you're actually drowning in competition.
That's the fatal error. And we do this because, we are just conditioned to compete from birth.
Yeah.
Think about the education system. It's a tournament.
Oh, totally. You compete for grades, then for college admissions, then for that prestigious internship. You spend your whole life just looking at the person next to you, trying to beat them by a fraction of a point.
And Thiel gets really vulnerable about this. He was the ultimate gold star student. Stanford, then Stanford Law. He was on the fast track to, the ultimate prize, a Supreme Court clerkship.
The absolute peak for a law student.
He wanted it more than anything. He competed, he interviewed, and he lost.
Which must have been devastating.
He said he thought his life was over. But years later, he realized that if he had won that competition, he would have been trapped. He would have spent his life writing legal briefs. He never would have founded PayPal. Winning that competition would have stopped him from doing something new.
It's that idea that competition makes you focus on all the wrong things. He uses this contrast between Marx and Shakespeare to explain it, which I thought was brilliant.
It's a great philosophical pivot. So Marx says conflict happens because people are different, the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie.
Okay.
But Shakespeare says the opposite. In Romeo and Juliet, the Montagues and Capulets are alike in dignity. They're exactly the same. They fight because they're the same.
They lose sight of why they're even fighting and just focus on the rival.
And we see this in tech all the time. Look at the battles between Microsoft and Google a decade ago. Microsoft got obsessed with Google, so they launched Bing. Google got obsessed with Microsoft, so they launched Chrome OS to hurt Windows.
They were just reacting to each other like these two warring families.
Exactly. And while they were busy wrestling in the mud, Apple came out of nowhere with the iPhone and overtook them both in value. They were so focused on the competition that they completely missed the 0 to 1 moment.
Competition makes you copy. It's like that geometry war example he gives.
Yeah, with the card readers.
Square comes out with a credit card reader. There's a square. So a competitor launches one that is a triangle. Another one makes a half moon.
It's hilarious, but it's also tragic. That's not innovation. It's just, it's panic.
So if we accept that competition is a trap, how do we actually build a monopoly? Because you can't just snap your fingers and be Google.
No.
And Thiel gives a very specific roadmap, and the fourth step is completely counterintuitive. Start small.
It feels so wrong, doesn't it? Every pitch deck you see says, this is a $100 billion market, and if we just get 1%...
we'll be rich.
But that's a huge red flag, because if you aim for 1% of a huge market, you have to fight thousands of competitors for it. You will likely end up with 0%.
Thiel says you should aim for a market so small that you can dominate it almost immediately.
Look at Amazon. Jeff Bezos did not launch the everything store on day one.
No, he launched a bookstore.
And not just a bookstore, an online bookstore when basically nobody bought things online. It was a tiny niche. But books were easy to ship, and there were millions of titles. He dominated that niche completely. Only then did he move to CDs, then movies, then everything else.
Facebook is the same story. It wasn't social networking for the world. It was just for Harvard students.
A tiny market, maybe 10,000 people. But it was a dense market. Everyone used it. Once they monopolized Harvard, they moved to Yale, then the Ivy League, then all colleges. You monopolize a niche first, then you scale.
Right. And once you have that foothold, you need durability. Thiel outlines 4 pillars that make a monopoly last. I think we should walk through these because they're like a checklist for any business idea. First is proprietary technology.
And the rule of thumb here is what he calls the 10x rule. Your tech needs to be 10 times better than the closest substitute.
10 times better.
If you make a tablet that's 10% better than what's out there, nobody cares. People have habits. The iPad worked because it was 100 times better than the clunky tablets that existed before. It has to be a step change.
Then you have network effects. The product gets more valuable the more people use it. But this is tricky because of what we just said about starting small.
Right. A network effect is incredibly powerful, but it's really hard to get going. You can't just launch a massive network and hope for the best. That's why you start with a small, closed group like Harvard. You create an intense network effect in a little petri dish, and then you expand.
The third pillar is economies of scale. This is basically the math of software.
It's why Silicon Valley loves code. If you own a yoga studio, you have terrible economies of scale. To get more customers, you need to rent more space, hire more instructors. Your costs go up as your revenue goes up.
But with software.
The marginal cost of producing another copy of your code is 0. You can have 1 billion users without your costs exploding. That's how you get those Google-level profit margins.
And the final one is branding. He points to Apple as the gold standard, obviously.
But he gives a huge warning here. CEOs often think, if I just make a cool logo and run some cool ads, I'll be Apple.
Right.
He points to Yahoo under Marissa Mayer. She tried to brand her way to success, cool offices, new logo, lots of buzz. But the core product didn't improve. Branding is a lagging indicator. It polishes a monopoly. It doesn't create one.
I want to ask you about a specific buzzword that Thiel seems to really hate. Disruption. We hear it every single day. We are going to disrupt the industry. Why does he hate it so much?
Because disruption is basically a declaration of war. If you say, I'm going to disrupt the record industry, you are framing yourself as a direct threat. You are inviting the big dogs to come and kill you.
Like Napster.
Napster tried to disrupt the record labels and they got sued into oblivion. The better strategy is to be subtle. You don't want to disrupt. You want to create something new so quietly that by the time the incumbents even realize you're a threat, it's already too late.
It all leads back to this idea of agency. You have to plan this stuff. You can't just stumble into a monopoly. And this opens up the real philosophical core of the book, the debate between luck and skill.
This is the lottery ticket question. You have famous thinkers like Malcolm Gladwell who argue that success is mostly context. Bill Gates was born in the right year, near the right computer lab.
And honestly, there's some truth to that. Luck plays a role.
Of course. But Thiel pushes back hard. He says, you are not a lottery ticket.
How does he argue that?
He appeals to the data on serial entrepreneurs. If it was just luck, just a lottery, then nobody should be able to win twice. But look at Elon Musk, PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX. Or Jack Dorsey with Twitter and Square. Steve Jobs with Apple, then Pixar, then Apple again.
You can't roll double sixes that many times in a row.
Exactly. So his point is that we have control, we can shape the future. But he argues that as a society, we've kind of lost that belief. And he maps this out in this quadrant of views of the future that I found fascinating.
Oh yeah, this was great. He divides the world into optimists versus pessimists and definite versus indefinite.
This is crucial to understanding the modern world. Let's start with indefinite pessimism. This is largely modern Europe. They think the future will be bleak, but they don't know exactly how or when, so they just drift. They enjoy their long vacations. They don't make big plans. They just wait for the decline.
Then you have definite pessimism.
That is China. They believe the future is dangerous and resource constrained. So they have a very specific, definite plan to survive it. Copy everything that works, build massive infrastructure, hoard resources.
And then there's definite optimism. This is the hero of the story.
Yeah.
This was the U.S. in the 1950s and 60s. We believed the future would be better, and we had a concrete plan.
We are going to the moon in this decade. We are building the interstate highway system. We envisioned a specific future, and we built it. But then, around the 1980s, something shifted. We moved into indefinite optimism.
This is where we are now. We think the future will be better. We are generally optimistic. But we have no idea how it will happen. We just assume progress is sort of automatic.
Exactly. And because we don't have a specific plan, we act differently. This explains the modern career path perfectly. Why do so many smart Ivy League graduates go into finance or law or consulting?
Because they're keeping their options open.
Right. Keeping options open is the slogan of indefinite optimism. It means, I don't know what the future holds, so I'm going to buy a ticket that works anywhere. It's hedging. We've stopped building specific things and started betting on everything.
And this brings us to the power law. This was a concept I struggled with at first, but it explains why hedging is actually a disaster in the startup world.
So in the stock market, diversification works. You buy the S&P 500 because you want to capture the average growth. Returns are, normally distributed,
But in the world of startups and innovation, returns follow a power law.
which means a tiny handful of companies radically outperform everyone else combined.
The stat that blew my mind was about venture capital funds. I always assumed VCs invest in 10 companies, hoping 5 or 6 do okay.
Not at all. In a successful fund, the single best investment will usually return more money than the entire rest of the fund combined. Facebook didn't just do better than the other startups in Thiel's portfolio, it did better than all of them put together times 1,000.
So if you are an investor or even an employee choosing a company, you shouldn't be diversifying. You need to find that one company on the power law curve and go all in.
Yes. In a power law world, diversification is just a hedge against ignorance. It's admitting you don't know which company's the winner. If you really understood the future, you would put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket like a hawk.
But to find that basket, to find that 0 to 1 idea, you have to look for what Thiel calls secrets. And he introduces this with a really jarring reference.
Yeah, the Unabomber Manifesto. He definitely knows how to get your attention.
He brings up Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Obviously not to endorse the terrorism, but to look at his critique of modern life. Kaczynski argued that people are depressed because all the hard problems have been solved.
We're just left with trivial problems like what show to binge watch or impossible problems.
It's the idea that the world is flat and mined out. No new continents to discover. But Thiel says Kaczynski is totally wrong. He says there are still secrets, problems that are hard but solvable.
And he divides these into natural secrets and human secrets. Natural secrets are just undiscovered science like a cure for cancer. But human secrets, these are the juicy ones.
What's a human secret?
It's something that's true about people, but that we either don't realize or we don't talk about. Take Airbnb. The conventional wisdom was that nobody wants to stay in a stranger's house. It's unsafe, it's weird. That was the surface level truth. But the human secret was that people actually craved connection and authentic travel, and they would trust strangers if you gave them a reputation system.
So the secret was just hiding in plain sight. It was a social taboo that turned out to be false.
Exactly. And because it was a secret, because everyone else thought it was a terrible idea, Airbnb had the space to build a monopoly without anyone fighting them. If you can find a human behavior that everyone ignores, there is a massive business hidden in there.
But you have to keep looking. He warns about companies that stop hunting for secrets. He points to Hewlett-Packard. In the 90s, HP was an invention machine. They were finding natural secrets left and right.
And then in the 2000s, the culture changed. The board started focusing on who was chairman, on stock prices, on internal politics. They stopped looking outward at the frontiers of science and started looking inward at each other.
And the value of the company just collapsed. It's a warning. When you stop believing in secrets, you stop innovating. You fall right back into the competition trap.
Precisely.
So let's bring this all home. We've covered a lot here, from the lie of competition to the power law to the hidden secrets of human behavior. What's the synthesis? What does the listener actually do with all this?
Well, I think it comes down to a shift in mindset. You have to reject the safety of the crowd. The crowd tells you to compete. It tells you to diversify. It tells you to follow the standard career path because the future is unsure.
Just itch.
Right. And Thiel is telling you to reject all of that, he's saying. Believe that the future is something you can actually build. Find a small, specific niche you can own. And most importantly, have the courage to pursue a secret that everyone else thinks is completely crazy.
And there's one final twist he puts on the timing. We always hear about the first mover advantage. You got to be first.
But being first is just a tactic. It gives you a head start. The goal isn't to be the first. The goal is to be the last.
The last mover.
You want to make the last great development in a specific market and enjoy the monopoly profits for decades. Google wants to be the last search engine. Facebook wants to be the last social network.
It's a long game. It's not about the quick win. It's about generating cash flow for the next 20 years.
That's where the real value is.
So here is my challenge to you listening right now. Look at your industry. Look at your daily life. What is something that everyone around you just assumes is true? What is a convention that feels permanent but might actually be a human secret waiting to be uncovered?
It's the question we started with. What important truth do very few people agree with you on?
And if you find that truth, don't tweet it.
No.
Don't tell anyone.
Build a company on it.
That is how you go from 0 to 1.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.